Welcome back, guys. So today let's do a top 10 horror ranking of 2018. And I did my ranking of all 91 movies I saw in 2018. But if you want a shorter, simplified ranking for horror, for my top 10 horror movies, I wanted to do that here. And I wanted people to know, for just my horror fans, because there's a lot of people that are on this channel that follow me because they like my reviews on horror, and horror is one of my favorite genres, so I felt like it did work to do a review or a ranking of like my top 10 horror of 2018, because this was a damn good year for horror. It really was, and it surprised me how with the 91 movies I saw, at least 5 or 6 of these, six of these are in my top 15, top 20, which is really cool, in my top 10 ranking. So let's start off with number 10. And my number 10 would be a movie that I'm divisive on, but overall I still think it's very unique and very imaginative, which is Mandy with Nicolas Cage. And for me, the first hour of this movie, this 2-hour movie, is really uninteresting. Like, I felt like for the first half, it felt like it was more pretentious in a way where it's just not very interesting. It was very boring in the first half. But even though it was boring in the first half, visually speaking, it was incredible. Incredibly just visually moving, and it truly is a unique movie, and I wish I could put it higher up on this ranking, but I just didn't love everything about it. I didn't love the first half, even though it had some cool things in it. The second half is where it becomes a grindhouse movie, and it's really, really awesome, and really gory, and really disgusting, and Nicolas Cage is awesome. So that's why Mandy is my number 10, but still, despite things I have issues with, I still enjoyed Mandy a lot. So my number 9 would be Unsane, the Claire Foy movie, which was really a surprise to whenever this movie came out. I really was surprised with this Steven Soderbergh movie where like he literally filmed the whole movie on an iPhone, I think. I believe it was like an iPhone that he filmed the whole movie on, literally. Which, filmmaking wise, that's a really cool thing to do. Like it is obviously, it obviously looks like it's set, or it's filmed from a iPhone, but honestly, the way that that it's filmed on the iPhone, it makes this movie feel more like you are, I don't know, like it felt like with how it was filmed, it felt like you were very like in a small area, like if that makes sense, because it was filmed with a small phone. So I thought that was really cool, and I thought that it really felt like you were in a small area with how it was filmed, with how this person is going insane, or thinking she is, and with the way it's filmed, it looks really scary. Like it just looks really effective with her like losing it, and it just, in terms of how it's filmed, it was filmed very well. For being a basic phone, like filmed on a phone, that's really cool. And her performance, Claire Foy's performance, is really fantastic, and the villain in this is really cool, and the villain is really humanized as well. I like that they really humanized the villain too, where it's in a way that surprised me genuinely. I was like, that's really cool that they went this direction with the villain. So I really enjoyed that as well. So this was a very great horror movie, and I really loved the lead performance. I really thought she was great, and I liked how Amy Irving is also in this. She's not in it a lot, but I love Amy Irving, and it's cool to see her back in this. So that's why Unsane is my number 9. And my number 8 would be The Strangers Prey at Night, which is a really fun sequel to the first Strangers movie, where the first Strangers movie was a like kind of a rip on like the 70s horror films, slow burn horror films, but it was really great still. This one is a kind of like a riff on the 80s horror movies with the soundtrack, with it being a slasher, but not a big body count slasher. It's only a couple people die, but it's really it works as an 80s slasher, and I really enjoyed the cinematography, the music, the characters were fine, all the performances were great, so I thought this was a really solid sequel that I can't really say much else about because I think it's just really solid for like entertainment reasons. So I really enjoyed The Strangers Prey at Night, and that's why it's my number 8. And my number 7, which is a movie that just came out and flooded the internet with memes. Like, this movie is getting such publicity, which is Bird Box, the new Sandra Bullock horror movie. Similar to A Quiet Place, like a mix between The Happening and A Quiet Place. And it's a really, really cool movie, and it's a really cool premise. I really love all the performances. I like the idea of this entity that is haunting these people, and they've got to wear blindfolds. I thought that it was really effective and really well done with everything and everybody involved. I really love Bird Box, and it's just one of those movies that's flooding the market in terms of like, I see it everywhere I'm going online now. Especially Facebook or YouTube, like anywhere I see something about Bird Box, and it's insane. Like, I just didn't think this movie would be that interesting, but I really, really enjoyed Bird Box, so that's my number 7. And my number 6 would be a really cool surprise from J.J. Abrams, which is Overlord, this World War II zombie movie, where the first half of the movie is literally a World War II movie, and then it becomes a zombie movie. And before the zombie stuff happens, this movie is intense as shit. These characters are interesting. The gore is incredibly effective and disgusting and just irredeemable with like how some people are killed. I love that, and I loved how effective these zombies were too. Like, I don't want to say much about it, but it just did a great job of being intense and fun and entertaining, and I really loved this movie. Even though there have been obviously World War II zombie movies before, this one really was entertaining and really, really incredibly fun, and that's why it's really high up there on my rankings for the year and for this list for number 6. And then number 5 would be A Quiet Place, a movie that people we're already getting hyped about because the trailer alone blew me away. Like, I love the fact that you didn't see much from the trailer except for, oh, these people got to be quiet, they've got to not speak, and it didn't show much. And I love the fact that in the trailer I was thinking, I hope that they stick with it and have this movie basically be a silent movie, which I thought for this day and age, for people who can't pay attention longer than 2 seconds without dialogue, this blew me away going into the theater and watching this, and everybody in the theater was quiet the whole time. Everybody was paying full attention. I felt like I gained a little faith in humanity there, because I feel like a lot of people wouldn't have watched this movie because it doesn't have talking in it, and I thought that this really was such an interesting, fascinating movie, and I love how it tries to be something different and unique as opposed to what we get nowadays. And I love the characters. I love the performances. John Krasinski and Emily Blunt are really fantastic, and these kid characters are really good too. The thrills are really intense. The ending of the movie just blew me away with all types of feelings, like in terms of emotion, in terms of horror. Like, this does it all at the end of the movie, and the whole movie the movie as a whole is still fantastic. But I love the hell out of A Quiet Place. I thought it was just a fantastic movie that I'm glad that it lived up to the hype for me. And then my number 4 would be Annihilation, Alex Garland's newest movie, who also did Ex Machina, which is a great science fiction horror movie. And this is another science fiction horror movie where I don't want to ruin this movie. I want to keep this movie, I don't want to say anything about it besides the fact that if the basic plot is that Natalie Portman and this group of scientists, or military scientists, go into this thing called the Shimmer, where it distorts reality, and trying to find some answers, just something that happened recently. And this movie is fantastic in terms of building scares, in terms of being unique and interesting. there is a moment in this movie where I will never, like, I'll never look at this kind of animal the same way again. Just because of what they did with this certain animal. It it just was such a surprise in that moment where I just went, oh my god, like, just, it was an incredible jump scare, an incredible voice that is put on this animal. And I think I'm going too far with spoilers. I'm going to keep that spoiler free, but that scene with the animal is so great. And Natalie Portman is great, and I loved how everything about this movie is so unique and so fresh and so creepy and so just overall such an interesting, fascinating movie. So I loved Annihilation. And number 3, I'm going to fanboy it up and talk about Halloween 2018. Halloween 2018 was one of those horror movies where I am a giant fan of the Halloween franchise, like everybody in the world. Obviously, every horror fan loves Halloween. Killer Flicks, everybody says Halloween's the best thing ever. It's not my favorite movie of the year, but it is incredibly fun. I really loved the kills. I loved Jamie Lee Curtis. I loved Michael Myers. James Hugh Courtney was really fantastic as this new interpretation of Michael Myers as opposed to the other ones where, I mean, it's kind of the same as the other ones, but he stands out as opposed to a lot of the other ones that came after the first film, after Nick Castle. So I really loved that. I loved everything about these characters. I loved the dynamic between Laurie, her daughter, and her granddaughter. All the side characters were fine, but they weren't like amazing. And that one character that everybody bitches about, that didn't bother me a lot, but the first time I did see it, I was like, oh, this is pretty jarring. But then after I watched it again, I was like, oh, it didn't bother me as much. People need to get over stuff. But I really did love Halloween 2018 for a fun, really great sequel that felt very much almost the closest to John Carpenter, besides the original Halloween 2, which did have a lot of Carpenter-esque feeling to it. But this one, the now true sequel, which is another one that erases all the continuity, is the best sequel in my opinion overall. Like, it is very, very good in a lot of aspects, even though it has a couple issues, like every Halloween sequel. I think that this one is the best one overall, best sequel overall to the franchise, to the first one. So Halloween is my number 3. And then my number 2 would be Suspiria. Luca Guadagnino. I've literally probably just said his name like in the worst way ever, but that guy who directed Call Me By Your Name, which is a really, really great movie, a great visually pleasing movie as well, with the cinematography, which this has the same thing. This director knows what he is doing with visuals. This is a beautiful visual movie, Suspiria. The violence in this movie is scary and gross and disgusting and unforgiving. And this movie isn't all about the violence either. I love how this is a 2.5-hour movie with a real big story to it. And I love the fact that this is not the original movie again in terms of remakes. This, you could completely call it its own thing. It's got the basis of like what the story of the original Suspiria is, but it doesn't fall at that direction, and it's totally different in terms of characters, in terms of how everything is resolved. It's not, like, you can call it a remake, but it's really, like, it doesn't feel very close to the original besides the template of what the story is. Everything else, visually, tonally, is different. Even the score, which Goblin in the original Suspiria had a fantastic score, a creepy, fantastic score. In this one, it's Thom Yorke, who has a really fantastic score that's very light and very not fast-paced, not scary. It's not a scary score, and I like that. I love how it's different. I love that this is a very unique movie to the original film, and just a very unique movie in general. A very unforgiving, disgusting movie, but I love that. I love the fact about this movie. I love that about this movie. So Suspiria was fantastic. It's my number 2. And my number 1 would be Hereditary. Ari Aster's first movie he's directed. Now, this guy knows what he's doing, and I love the fact that he was talking to Alex Wolff, the guy who plays Peter in the movie. He was talking to Alex Wolff about, like, Alex Wolff was mentioning to him, "Do you like horror movies?" And then he literally said to him, like, "I hate horror movies." This guy who hates horror movies directed a horror movie that is true horror. And I thought that was just such a funny thing that he said to him. Like, he hates horror movies, but he made this movie that is incredible. This is truly one of the most, in my opinion, one of the most groundbreaking horror movies I've seen in a long time. In terms of everything, in terms of the performances, which are incredible. Toni Collette is just blows me away. Everybody is incredible in this movie, but she in particular, like, she needs a fucking Oscar nom, and I don't know if she will get one because it's horror. It's not. The Exorcist got nominated for Best Picture, I think, but not any other horror movie after that, which sucks. But Toni Collette is incredible. Everybody else is great in the movie. Visually speaking, this stands out from other horror movies, just in terms of how it looks. I know immediately, oh, this is Hereditary. In terms of the violence, in terms of the suspense, this builds on suspense in a way with no jump scares, with just characters breaking down, with characters evolving or devolving, I guess, because they go down this downward spiral where this movie just becomes unapologetically horrifying and unapologetically dreadful. Like, it never becomes positive. Like, the movie literally just keeps getting dire and dire and worse. And I love that about this movie. I love that this movie there's no happy ending for anything in this movie. And I've loved it. I've seen it a couple times. I saw it twice in the theater. It blew me away both times. With the people I saw it with, they were blown away as well. This movie just blew me away with everything. I think it's honestly one of the most perfect horror movies I've ever seen. Watching it a couple times has solidified the fact for me that just everything about this just is incredible. And there are two moments in this movie, I won't say here because I don't want to spoil it, but there are two moments in this movie where they are just disgusting and unforgiving, and I will never forget these two horrifying moments in the movie. So I just love the hell out of Hereditary. That's why it is my number one. So, man, this was a fantastic year for horror. I really loved every, like, this, in this top 10, the only one I'm kind of iffy on is Mandy, but besides that, I loved every one of these movies. And Mandy still was good. It's just I just didn't love the first half of it. So this was a fantastic year for horror, and I didn't even get to see, like, The Ritual or Apostle, which I wanted to see, but I just didn't get a chance to. I just forgot because there's so many movies I want to see, whether it's horror or not. So it's just hard to remember everything that I need to see. So, but I will try to watch Apostle sometime. I really do want to see, like, there's a lot of horror movies that I missed, and I did want to see this year, but I just didn't have a chance. So this top 10, I think, for now works very well, because these movies all, including Mandy, which I was iffy on, are all incredible. So this was a great year for horror, and I really dug every one of these I saw in this top 10. So tell me down below what your top 10 are, and thank you guys so much for watching, and take care.